All right, so guys, ESPN has this little NFL playoff machine where they do their, you can simulate every single game, and I just wanted to walk everyone through where we stand in terms of this weekend, what's happening in terms of that Monday night game not getting played. It really throws, a crazy curveball into the whole playoff scenario. So where we stand right now, we've got Kansas City. They've got that extra win at 13-3, the number one overall seed. You've got Buffalo at 12-3. Of course, the situation in regards to Buffalo was if they won out, meaning they won on Monday night against Cincinnati, and then they won this week in a home game against New England, they would have the number one overall seed and the first round bye because they own the tiebreaker. Now, I don't know what the NFL is going to do. They have just not come out and said anything. The only thing they said, they're not resuming that game, the Monday night game this week. So the Bills will face the Patriots on Sunday at 1, and the Bengals will face the Ravens. And we don't know. I think the most logical thought is they're either just going to say they're not going to play the game, and they might give the 1 seed to either Kansas City or Buffalo. But, at that point, Buffalo is 13-3 if they beat New England. Kansas City is 14-3 if they beat Vegas. I think the dream scenario for the NFL would be Kansas City losing, Buffalo winning. At that point, you could make Buffalo, even with one less game played, the number one overall seed because they have the tiebreaker and they would have one less loss even with the less games played. But that would require Kansas City to lose to the Raiders. So there's a lot of stuff at play right now in terms of the AFC, what's happening. But right now, Kansas City, when you go to the matchup predictor, we're going to call it a tie. I'm kidding. We're not doing that. We're going to say Kansas City wins that game. And then I wonder if you say, if you say Buffalo wins, they still have Buffalo here as the 2 seed behind Kansas City because they would be 13-3. Kansas City would be 14-3. And at that point, the NFL has the dilemma. Do they just scrap the Pro Bowl week, whole thing where you basically get a bye before the Super Bowl? Of course, the problem is you want teams to get a bye before the Super Bowl so everyone can get healthy because it's the biggest game of the year. So the NFL right now, they've got a dilemma. It's very hard because they haven't said anything. We'll see what they end up doing with the number 1 seed. But I think smart money says Kansas City is going to beat Vegas. Derek Carr is out. I know Stidham played well last week. I think he'll play well again. But I still think Mahomes and that Chiefs offense will win. And they, at this point, they're the presumed 1 seed. Even if Buffalo rallies and beats New England, they are 7-point favorites. When it comes to this matchup, it's relatively simple. For Tennessee, they need to win to get in. If they don't win, I believe they have 0 chance at any wild card. They have to win because they lost last week to Dallas in a game where they just punted and they said, listen, we want to get Derrick Henry healthy. We know we have to win next week in Jacksonville. We're going to give Derrick Henry 500 carries and keep him rested. They're going to roll with Josh Dobbs in Jacksonville. Guys, if the Jaguars win, obviously they remain the 4 seed. They win that game and they take the AFC South and they host a playoff game as division champions. Taking a look at this Bucs-Atlanta Falcons matchup, I'm actually so right now Tampa Bay is a 4 seed. They lose that game, they're still a 4 seed. They win that game, they're still a 4 seed. So there's the dilemma within the Tampa Bay Bucs facility right now. They've had a real wonky season. The only reason they won their division is because it's a horrible division. And you just had Tom Brady throw for 400 yards and Mike Evans 200 yards, a breakout game, multiple touchdowns. Do you really want to ruin the momentum you have? Are they going to play Tom Brady for a half? Is he going to play the full game? You don't want to risk injury. You're juggling 10 things at once. I would say tentatively they're going to play Tom Brady for the first half and then Blaine Gabbert will play the second half. That's just speculation. Whether they win or not, it doesn't matter. Right now, Atlanta is the favorite. So they're going to either be 8-9 or 9-8 as division champions in the NFC there. So, and they will be the 4 seed. So they're locked into the 4 seed, and then Jacksonville wins. They're locked into the 4 seed. Looking at Minnesota. So right now, Minnesota sitting at 12-4, sitting at that 3 seed. If they win, they would leapfrog San Francisco, but then we would expect San Francisco to win as well. They're 14.5-point favorites. I wonder if Chicago wins if that. So guys, basically what's happening in this game is Chicago is blatantly tanking, which I fully endorse. Absolutely. There's no reason to win this game. Lock up a minimum of the number 2 overall pick if you are Chicago. It is sad that Justin Fields doesn't get the chance to break the QB rushing record. He was around 64 yards away, but they don't want to get him injured. There's no receivers. This roster is completely gutted, and they do have an outside chance at the number 1 overall pick if Houston, who's only 2.5-point underdogs, by the way, if Houston beats, the Colts, I don't think they will, but if they do and Chicago loses, Chicago gets the number 1 overall pick, and then they can get an artillery barrage of assets in return for the number 1 overall pick, because you would assume they would trade the number 1 overall pick to a team that wants Bryce Young or CJ Stroud, and they just load up on assets. They get Justin Fields, an elite offensive lineman, maybe even another receiver, and maybe, get some elite defensive players. That's what Chicago is going to do. So I think Minnesota for sure is winning this game. Chicago starting Nathan Peterman. They are currently 8.5-point underdogs the last time I saw. Taking a look at Baltimore and Cincinnati, I have no clue how this scenario works. Oh, Baltimore is 10-6, Cincy is 11-4. So let's say Baltimore wins this game, Cincy's still good. So yeah, guys, my expectation here is there was an outside chance Cincinnati had at the 1 seed, but because that Monday night game didn't get played, it throws, a monkey wrench into that. I do think Cincinnati beats Baltimore at home and carries the momentum they've had for a number of reasons, but mainly Baltimore, it looks like, is going to be without Lamar Jackson again. And we know their struggles on offense without Lamar Jackson. They just lost to Pittsburgh. They can't generate points without him. So guys, I think Cincinnati wins that game and they remain the 3 seed behind Buffalo and Kansas City in the AFC. This is the big tank fest. I really like the under 38.5 in this game because both of these teams are going to try and lose, but I do think Indianapolis wins at home because I cannot see a scenario where Houston ruins their tank and ruins their Bryce Young or CJ Stroud, whoever they want with that number 1 overall pick. The option is very clear. If Houston loses, they get the number 1 overall pick. If they win, I'm guessing they don't get the number 1 overall pick because Chicago is starting Nathan Peterman. And they lose, they would get it. So guys, I do think Indy wins that game. And at that point, I believe Indianapolis, if they win, would fall from number 4 to number 5. Don't quote me on that, but I believe that's what would happen depending on if Arizona wins. But obviously, we think Arizona's going to lose to San Francisco. Arizona's in full tank mode. Next, we have the Jets and the Dolphins. So you see the Dolphins right now as the 7 seed. The situation in this game is really unique. I believe the Jets are currently 1-point favorites. Teddy Bridgewater is either going to be playing this game injured or Miami is going to be starting their 3rd-string quarterback. One of those 2 options. Neither of them are good. It's either an injured Teddy Bridgewater or a 3rd-string rookie, and you're facing a Jets team who struggled badly last week. Yes, I'll admit it, but still, there's a huge incentive for Mike White to go out there and play well. He's playing for a roster spot next year in the NFL, maybe even possibly vying for a starting spot. He needs a really good game. So let's just say the Jets win this game, and look at that. Pittsburgh goes in to the 7 seed at that point. That is if the Jets beat Miami. If Miami somehow ekes it out, they stay as the 7 seed right now. Of course, Pittsburgh would have to beat Cleveland, and they're only 2.5-point favorites, but I do think they will win that game barely. We will get to it. This game is completely meaningless. Carolina, New Orleans. I have a strong faith that New Orleans will win this game. just because it feels like New Orleans at home. They're going to want to send their fans home happy in the final game of the regular season. They have no first-round pick, so they really have no incentive to lose this game. And then Carolina is coming off that demoralizing loss last week against Tampa Bay, which knocked them out of the divisional race. So I do like New Orleans to win this game, and I do like them to cover that 3.5-point spread. Cleveland and Pittsburgh, everyone loves the under 40.5. Both of these teams have been going under in every game. You know, obviously this is a situation. Pittsburgh is going to rely on the Jets to win, and they also have to rely on the Bills to beat the Patriots. If the Patriots win, they move to the 7 seed. So you can see that, and Buffalo would actually drop to the 3 seed and face Baltimore. Cincinnati would be the 2 seed, and that would actually be a rematch. If New England... Oh, no, it wouldn't be a rematch. Never mind. New England would travel to Cincinnati. So if New England somehow pulls off the upset against Buffalo, they're the 7 seed. And Miami, no matter what happens with them, they're out of the playoffs. But right now, we do expect Buffalo to win that game. Let's say the Jets win because they are 1-point favorites. Let's say the Steelers beat the Browns, and there you go. What happens if the Browns win? It goes back to New England. So how about New England? You're rooting against both Miami and Pittsburgh. If they both somehow lose, even if you lose, you could still get in at 8 and 9, and then you've got a rematch in Buffalo. So you could have back-to-back games in Buffalo if you're New England. There's a lot of stuff happening right now. And then you do have the Giants and Philadelphia. Certainly Philadelphia, they've rested. They've been very careful with Jalen Hurts, very calculated. They need to win this game. They're 14-point favorites. The Giants, you see them as the 6th seed. If they win this game, they're still the 6th seed. There's no motivation for them to win this game. They're 14-point underdogs. We will take Philadelphia to win and to lock up the number 1 overall seed, we would think. Dallas and the Commanders, I think this game is really, really shady because Dallas is going to come out. They're going to play their starters because there is that crazy chance the Giants win, the Cowboys win, Dallas moves into the 1 seed. We would expect San Francisco to also to win. Dallas would fall to the 2 seed, but they would still be division champions, and Philadelphia would have to play a road game if they somehow lost to the Giants. But guys, think about this scenario for a second. Philadelphia, very likely in my opinion, is going to be up 21-0 or something like that at the half. The Cowboys are probably going to be in a relatively close game against the Commanders. The Cowboys are going to scoreboard watch. They're going to see Philadelphia being up by a lot, and they're going to say, listen, we're stuck at the 5 seed. We're going to rest our starters, and now you have a young Sam Howell trying to prove something in his first start, and maybe the Commanders pull off the upset against Dallas if that scenario plays out. I know it's a Hail Mary. I'm just throwing everything out there. It could happen to where at halftime Dallas could see Philadelphia is crushing the Giants because the Giants are resting everyone and they don't need that game. And Dallas in the second half could rest their players. So whether or not Dallas wins, it doesn't matter. They have a record to where they'll be the 5 seed no matter what if Philadelphia wins. I'll say they win this game just for the sake of the argument. This is the game I'm really interested in because there is just crazy line movement on the Chargers-Broncos game. So right now, Los Angeles in a very good spot at this point as a non-division champion going to Jacksonville, probably as a pick'em game or maybe they're even the slight favorite. Let's say they win. They stay as the 5 seed. Let's say they lose. They stay as the 5 seed again. That might be because, oh, you know what? If that really is the case, then it does make sense for them to rest Justin Herbert. So I think they're locked into the 5 seed unless maybe New England wins. It doesn't change anything. Okay, so it looks like Los Angeles is locked into the 5 seed. So then that line movement does make sense. I was told by ESPN, and apparently they got this wrong, that Los Angeles needed to win this game to avoid falling to the 6th seed or the 7th seed in a matchup with Buffalo or Cincinnati, which you want to avoid. If you're in the AFC, you want to be a 5 seed and you want that game against Jacksonville or Tennessee. So that does make sense 100%. So this game is meaningless. The Denver Broncos Chargers game is meaningless for the Chargers. They're locked into the 5 seed. At least that's what this is telling me. And then, guys, of course, we would expect San Francisco to win. And San Francisco, they need to win, and they need Philadelphia to somehow lose to get the 1 seed. We don't think that's going to happen. We think Philadelphia is going to win. They're going to be the 1 seed. San Francisco will be the 2 seed. This game, you have Seattle versus LA. This is another 425 game. Let's say Seattle wins this game. They're sitting as the 7 seed, and then that sets up the scenario between Green Bay and Detroit. I believe if Seattle wins, Detroit is knocked out of the playoffs, and they are. So Detroit, if Seattle wins, that's a big advantage to Green Bay because Detroit is done. Green Bay wins, they're in. The only scenario for Detroit is the Rams winning and then them winning on the road, and Detroit gets in as the 7 seed in that scenario. That's the only scenario for them. But my expectation is probably Seattle wins, the game becomes meaningless for Detroit, and then Green Bay beats Detroit because Green Bay's been really good at home this year. They've been really good in the second half. They're 4.5-point favorites, and this is kind of how it could shake out in this scenario if it played out. Of course, you change one thing. The Steelers win. They go into the 7 seed. They're going to Buffalo, with a rookie quarterback. Maybe the Browns win, but the Miami wins. They're the 7 seed. So there's a few different things you can change, but I just wanted to give everyone the full breakdown of the current playoff situation using this playoff machine predictor and kind of where we stand right now. Of course, I don't know what they're going to do with the 1 seed in the AFC. They haven't said anything. Maybe they'll say something today, and we'll get clarity on that. Maybe they're hoping that Kansas City somehow loses to the Raiders and Buffalo wins, which would indirectly take care of the scenario. Buffalo would be the 1 seed. You wouldn't have to reschedule that game against Cincinnati, I don't think, unless you get a conflict with Kansas City and Cincinnati possibly in the 2 or 3 seed because Cincinnati will have one less game played. And so I don't know, guys. The whole thing is really weird, but we'll have to see what ends up happening. It's just all speculation at this point. Either way, that's going to do it for this video, guys. Make sure you're following me on Twitter. Link to that's always in the description. I'm, of course, the Depressed Ginger. Thank you for watching.